Getting ahead of everybody else is pretty straightforward. There's only one thing you gotta do, and that thing is deliberate practice. So deliberate practice has been a big part of my life. It's showing up to improve at something with intent, mindfully, not just doing things willy-nilly and expecting to get better. Now, there's some different components about deliberate practice. So I used to play basketball, I golf and surf mostly now, but this applies to all three of those. It applies to schools and taking tests. It applies to video games like Call of Duty, Halo, League of Legends, everything, really. Cooking, even. But let's just use basketball as an example. So I used to play 5 days a week, every single week after school. And day after day, week after week, year after year, most of the same people would show up. And the vast majority of them, their skills would hardly improve, stay the same, or even regress. Whereas a select few of us, you can see the steady progress. You can see new skills forming and you can see us getting better. Not overnight, but noticeably. And with the vast majority of players, the one who didn't improve, they would show up to play, they would be consistent, but all they would do is show up, lace up, get in the game, run some pickup, and then head home, focus on other things, and then do it again the next day. The difference with a select few is that some other time in the day, we would show up back at the basketball court and we would work on deliberate practice. We would choose some skill to work on. We would take what is a great basketball player? What is all the skills that goes into being a great basketball player? Okay, there's shooting, there's dribbling, there's passing, right? And there's more than that. And we would break them down into the smallest components possible. Okay, dribbling. Well, there's dribbling with one hand, there's dribbling with the offhand, there's crossovers, there's different moves, and you work on them. You break it down and you work on them in a deliberate, in a very specific way in order to progress as effectively as possible. And a really important part of this is mastering the fundamentals. If you can't dribble with your right hand, if that's your dominant hand, work on that before you go to crossovers or dribbling with your offhand. If you can't make 99.99% of your layups when you're wide open, and you can't shoot from 3 feet away, don't step back to the three-point line and start jacking up threes with poor form. That's gonna hurt your fundamentals, and your fundamentals are the foundation. All your other skills are built up upon that. So if you have shaky fundamentals, you have a weak foundation, you're not gonna be able to build those skills up high. They're gonna tip over, they're gonna crash. The poor fundamentals they're gonna show. They're gonna make you plateau. I experienced this pretty recently with golf. I got to like a pretty low handicap, low single digits. But then I just couldn't get consistent enough with my swing. I could hit it far, but I'd have these random misses that would just kill my scores. And it really came back to just a real fundamental issue with my swing. Long story short, in the backswing, my arm was crossing over instead of staying in front of me. And with that, I just have to work on tiny little chips first, even putting, short game, small little swings, 20 yards, 30 yards, 50 yards, then work my way back up. And now there's so much more consistency and there's so much more power, effortless power, because my fundamentals are way better. So you can never go wrong with working more on the fundamentals. Like Bruce Lee said, I fear not the man who has practiced 10,000 kicks one time, but the man who has practiced one kick 10,000 times. Now, another really important part about deliberate practice is feedback. You gotta see how you're actually performing the thing. Either somebody who really knows what they're doing has gotta tell you and show you, or you gotta record yourself on camera, or you gotta get people to taste your food and tell you how it was. You need feedback. Feedback gives you what you need to work on. It gives you direction to your progress. Surfing is a great example of this. It's really hard to get footage of surfing unless you have someone willing to volunteer their time and you have a camera that probably zooms, or you have a drone or something. So most people don't get to see themselves surfing. And because there's so few opportunities to ride a wave, when you're surfing, you might be out there for like an hour, hour and a half and catch 10 waves, 5 waves, 3 waves. You barely have any time to actually work on your skills. And if you don't get to see what you're doing, that makes it so much harder. People end up standing in ways that, they don't even realize they're doing. And then they see themselves on camera and they're just like, what is that? That's me? I can't believe that. I thought I was ripping. And you really got to be careful with getting feedback from someone who seems like they know what they're doing, but don't quite either. You see this happen at the driving range all the time with golf. People giving unsolicited advice to beginners. And these people usually aren't super terrible, especially at the range. It looks like their ball's going somewhere. It looks like they're hitting it fairly regularly and consistently and with some distance. But there's a real difference between someone who really is a master and understands the right mechanics, the right technique, and can analyze and help you build good habits, versus someone who can just hit the ball and tell you a few things, a few cliche tips that might make you hit better right now, but it's going to build bad habits and hurt you in the long run. So don't take advice from just anyone, especially just because they're better than you. You got to make sure they're an excellent teacher. They know what to look out for, and that the people they have taught in the past get results, have good fundamentals, and don't have bad habits. Another really useful thing to do is observe the best of the best at it, whether it's the best surfers or the best golfers, the best bowlers, the best fashion designers, whatever it is. Study them, watch them, observe them as much as you can. You may not really know what you're even looking at first, but you just want to expose yourself constantly to what good form looks like, to what the highest level of doing this thing looks like. On my computer monitor, I used Wallpaper Engine to change my wallpaper to this video of a really high-level surfer with good fundamentals, Ethan Ewing. And this video just loops over and over and over on my computer monitor. And I've seen it like thousands of times now. At first, it just looked like any other surfing video that I've seen. Oh, this guy's ripping, like every other surfer. But the more and more I saw it, especially without thinking so hard about it, without analyzing it so much, I started seeing different nuances, different details that I didn't notice the first time I watched it, or the 10th time I watched it, or even the 50th time I watched it. So things started popping out to me where, as I was doing my own surfing and progressing in my own surfing, all of a sudden different areas of this video started highlighting themselves to me. Like, oh, that's what he's doing with his back arm, or oh, that's the part of the wave that he's on. But I wouldn't have been able to see that if that video wasn't playing over and over and over. And it's just on there all the time. Whether I'm eating in a different part of my room, it's still over there just playing. Whether I'm sitting at my desk, about to work, it's right there playing. So sometimes I get more out of it when I'm looking at it very closely and paying deep attention to it. Sometimes I get a lot out of it when I'm just glancing at it, not really thinking much of it, and some new insight pops up. So spend a lot of time observing and checking out the best at what they do and what you're trying to improve in. Another important part of this is you want to choose something you're actually curious about, something that you want to solve the problems in, where you go, how can I improve this part of it? Oh, I keep doing this part wrong with it. How do I get better with it? If you choose something where when you mess up and you get frustrated, you just want to give up on it, you don't want to solve the problems, you just want someone to do it for you, you've probably picked the wrong thing in the first place, and that already makes things really hard. Sometimes we choose things that aren't really meant for us just because we want someone else's approval, or we think it's the quick way to make money, or somebody else we admire is doing it, but that activity, that hobby, that thing just isn't really made for us. So choose something that ignites your curiosity, that makes you actually want to improve in it, want to overcome those challenges. And even if you do that, you're always going to have to step into discomfort. You're always going to have to learn to get out of your comfort zone. That's a huge part of this. Growing is uncomfortable. Pushing your limits is uncomfortable. This type of practice is uncomfortable. It's a lot of reps doing the same thing over and over. It's a lot of messing up. It's a lot of failing. But there's no failure. Failure is just an opportunity to learn. All the greatest winners in their fields have lost more than everybody else to get to where they are now. One of the best cheat codes to all this is to hire a coach. That's their job, whether it's a sports coach or a cooking coach or a life coach, a public speaking coach. Their job is to observe you, analyze you, give you feedback, give you drills, things to deliberately practice. They'll give you examples and pros to check out and observe and imitate. And it's usually worth the investment. Sometimes learning on your own, you develop so many bad habits and you don't get the right feedback and do the right practice, and it ends up costing you more in the long run. So depending on what you're doing and depending on how good you are at self-teaching, you might want to look into getting a coach, especially early on, just to get you going on the right track. You could always stop the coaching and pick it up as you need it, but someone there to actually help you along the way and point you in the right direction and encourage you, even if it's just for the encouragement, could be really valuable, really beneficial. So most people are distracted and they're just consumers and they don't know how to get better, or they don't have the willingness to. So just by implementing these things, by putting deliberate practice into play in your life, you'll skyrocket past everybody else around you. You've already heard about being consistent 1,000 times in other videos, so I'm not going to say too much on that. But it's just way easier to be consistent when you have a purpose behind it and you find joy in it. It feels like play to you. So that's my one tip with consistency. I hope this was helpful, and I hope deliberate practice becomes a part of your life, and I'll see you in the next one.